Number 9, it's this idea that we simply have to do it. It's the idea that we either do something in terms of getting rid of stuff that we don't like, so that something that we do will survive, or very negative consequences will come about. It's a sort of a position that I refer to as conservation at the barrel of a gun. A collection of quotes again here from feedback to that Kim Hill interview. The last one being most notably from one of New Zealand's foremost conservation biologists. And he wrote that the choice is simple. We save our most distinctive and valued species, or we feed them to rats, stoats, etc. It's just this very brutal either-or dichotomy. But is it really that simple? I really don't think it is, actually. We can actually preserve most of our iconic species in much smaller areas than they used to inhabit, as we have very successfully shown in many offshore islands and mainland sanctuary settings. I do also recognise the retort to that, however, which is that we're not going to be able to keep all of our biodiversity as we did 800 years ago. And this is really a point to which I have to agree, actually. Sure, we probably aren't going to be able to keep everything as it was in the past. And yes, this is probably going to involve some level of extinctions. But I think we also need to be talking about the notion of extinction and what that actually means today. Because while extinction is a really dirty word in conservation, it's also, as we all know, a very important part of evolution. Paleontologists, of course, remind us that most of the species that have ever lived are now extinct. So extinction is in many ways just a fact of life. But people take issue with extinction, I'm told, not just with extinction itself, but with human-induced extinction, with faster rates than the background rate, whatever that is. So it's fundamentally about our unease with causing it, rather than the notion of extinction itself. And maybe that's understandable, but in order for ecosystems to adapt to change conditions, there needs to be a degree of extinction on many levels, whether it's genes, varieties, species, or ecosystems. The very notion that humanity could change and expand on such unprecedented levels, but that a human-exclusive nature itself could concurrently remain static, or even relatively static, reflects the potential naivety in restoration thinking. Further, the notion that the rate of change in nature can be agreeably manipulated where necessary by humans also hints at a kind of arrogance on our part. Maybe our ecosystems are going to need to change now. And yes, maybe that change is going to involve some extinctions. Maybe as we come to realise how little of our ecosystems are completely within our control, we may have to become clearer about which species we're saving and why those species. Most of our conservation work in New Zealand, for example, involves saving native birds, and yet they're probably one of the more minor components of our biodiversity. At present, we're often just blindly pushing on under the understanding that we need to save everything and keep everything as it was in the past. It's like we have this big sign up all the time that just reads, no extinctions allowed. Change, sure, we'll allow change, but extinction, no, extinction is unacceptable. I think there seems to be too little self-reflection there, both on our enormous technical limitations and on the fact that some degree of extinction is in many ways now necessary for our ecosystems to adapt to the changed conditions that we've brought about.